General Manager Howie Roseman has learned from his 2023 mistakes, reuniting with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in what potentially could be the move of the offseason.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Eagles fans. I'm Louis DiBiase, co-host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, analyst also over at Bleacher Report. He's Gino Camilleri, my co-host, our scouting director, also an analyst over at Bleacher Report. On today's Locked On Eagles, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is back. The Eagles also made a few other signings we'll get into on Tuesday. They're also rumored to be in the trade market. We discuss a little bit more about the Saquon Barkley signing, all that and more. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 back if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Gino, Saquon Barkley was a huge signing yesterday. Bryce Huff might be the most underrated signing of free agency so far across the NFL. But what Howie Roseman just did tonight, bringing back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on a 3-year contract worth $27 million, upwards of $33 million with incentives, that to me, even if they trade up for a cornerback in the draft, they steal a receiver in round 2, whatever the move is, I think bringing back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is the move of the offseason already. Like, this guy in 2022 was everything you needed, and he was everything that you missed in 2023. It was the worst mistake Howie made last offseason was letting him go. Look, Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, like, they were the leaders of that team, but Chauncey was the tone setter. He was the reason that defense had the swagger they did, the attitude, the toughness, the playmaking, and they did not have that this year. They felt lifeless at times, and Chauncey is back, the heartbeat to me of this defense, and I'm just over the moon. This was the move they had to make.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me get this off. It was always CGJ. We told you, if you listen to the show the last week, the last month, we said that this guy was connected to the team, would fix multiple issues for this team. You talk about replacing Avonte Maddox potentially, Lou. Who was the guy that did that when he went down in 2022? Boom, CGJ. He's back in the building. You talk about having somebody that now can come in and play that Fangio style of safety that has to come down and be a great tackler. That is CGJ.
Yeah, go back and watch the Super Bowl tape. He was the only guy that could tackle that game.
Add him to Reed. Add him to Sidney Brown. This was the move that we have been talking about. Lou and I, round of applause to ourselves that we have been continuing to stick to our guns on this one at the safety position. And in a market where Xavier McKinney goes out there and gets, what, $17 million?
Yeah, Chauncey's only getting 9.
That's not a bad deal at all, Lou. And what was he talking about getting last year? I think the number was like 13 to 14.
Well, he wanted to reset the market, Gino. Honestly, this is more than I thought he would even get on the open market right now, but it's a lot less than he wanted last year. It's probably the exact contract that Howie offered him last year. It probably is. It was the $9 to $11 million range. Chauncey probably wanted what McKinney got, which is $16 to $17 million annually after leading the league in interceptions as a safety. And this year, he didn't want to reset the market. He didn't have that leverage, so Howie probably came back with a very similar looking contract that he gave him last year.
And the thing about the safety market was that it was moving quickly. In past years, it usually takes till like the second or third wave of free agency.
Oh, yeah. Gino Stone was gone.
Yeah, and Stone got a deal that was lower than I expected. It was on par with that of Kevin Byard. And you talk about Jordan Poyer went out there and signed with the Miami Dolphins, and Jeremy Chin he ended up in the Commanders defense. Yep. We're going to be seeing a bunch of him. And what does Howie do? He says, we made a mistake. You put it perfectly all the time, Lou. I applaud you for continuing to just say that Howie does it every time, that he just learns from his mistakes. He truly does.
He makes them, but at least he learns from them.
Yes, he is the kid who will take the fork and go to the outlet, and the parents say, no, Howie, and Howie will stick his finger in that outlet with the fork. He'll get zapped, and he'll say, okay, maybe I shouldn't allow the safety play to drop off that bad year over year. And it's a great way to come back after making a bunch of great signings the day before. And Lou, he made a few depth signings in the last 12 hours or so that I think made this team get better. And then you cap it off with a nighttime signing of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson up to $33 million. The AAV with the guarantees is somewhere around $9 million, right, Lou? So that's a deal to get this type of player who can play multiple positions for you. That's the emphasis, that this guy is getting paid as a safety, but he's going to be playing slot corner. He's going to be playing off-ball backer. He's going to be playing free safety.
Oh, he's going to roam everywhere. And, the difference is no matter where he goes, he's going to make plays on the football. And that's something last year that when he left the building, they didn't have a guy to replace him in that way. Sure, was Reed Blankenship okay at times? Yeah. Was Sidney Brown, did he flash at times? For sure. But 6 interceptions left the building. Not just the interceptions, but as you mentioned, flying downhill, making plays on the ball, making open field tackles. Look how bad they were as a tackling defense the second half of the year. And just look at the attitude and the lack of an identity or personality. I remember me and you were texting each other back and forth, getting so frustrated watching all the dogs on the Niners and the Chiefs. And we're like, we don't have those guys anymore. And the first player I thought of was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I'm like, that was our defense in 2022. And again, was he the guy? No, it was Fletcher Cox. It was Brandon Graham. It was those were the lifebloods of the defense. But Chauncey was the attitude. He was the personality of that team. He was the swagger, and you need that.
I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Jason Kelce are two people that represent the polar opposite of both of the personalities of Philadelphia. Jason Kelce being the put your helmet on, buckle it up, go to work, mind your manners, and just be the hardest working SOB on the block. And then there's the, hey, yo, what's going on over there, bro? Hey, that's Chauncey. He's going to get up in your face, and he's going to be your best friend as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, because that's the type of player we love. We love the junkyard dog. We love the guy that's going to scrap it up.
It's a great way to put it. He's the junkyard dog of the team.
Junkyard dog. That's what they were missing, Lou. They were a bunch of puppies last year. They were soft on defense. After that first half of the season, they were soft. They were sponsored by Charmin. They couldn't stop a nosebleed in the middle of that defense. And like you said, what were they missing? The dogs. You let him off the leash and Reed. That's a lot of firepower coming down.
It takes pressure off the young guys now, because now Reed Blankenship can be more of what he's supposed to be, a second or third safety. He's not supposed to be that number one guy. Like, he's not going to be your Chauncey, your Malcolm Jenkins. He's just not that talented to do it. He's a solid player, but he doesn't have that kind of ceiling or playmaking ability. Sidney Brown, now you don't have to rush him back as well either with that torn ACL he's recovering from. He's a third-round pick that you have a lot of upside with and a lot of hope for, but you didn't want to put that kind of pressure on the young guys, and they could still bring in another safety, right? I mean, they want to be 4+ deep at this position, but they had to make a move. And even as much as I love the Saquon signing yesterday, the Bryce Huff move, I was getting a little antsy that they had not brought in a safety or linebacker. Linebackers were dropping like flies today. Safety, though, was a little stagnant of a market, and they got the guy that we wanted. I kept saying I really wanted McKinney. The Eagles did pursue him. He was the best player in the class, but this might be just the best overall fit, both on and off the field. And it's for a lot cheaper. Again, you're saving $8 million a year to bring in Gardner-Johnson than McKinney. There's some injury risk to it, but this is a move that just makes just too much sense.
I just want to say, if this move was made by Bill Belichick, he would be applauded. Oh, he let a player that wanted to get paid go and walk, and he brought him back on a cheaper deal. How many times was Bill Belichick applauded? I think Jamie Collins, he did that too, like 3 or 4 times in his career. Well, Howie Roseman, he stuck to his number last year. And hey, it's a business. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, no hard feelings. Howie Roseman, no hard feelings. You want to come here and compete for a Super Bowl?
I was surprised, though, Gino. I did not think, considering Gardner-Johnson's personality, not to say that he's a bad guy or anything, but the way things ended, he wanted to reset the market, and Philly kind of undersold him, kind of gave him a offer that he thought was underpaying him. And so, you even hear the comments he made about fans, which he did apologize for on Twitter today. But I really didn't think this was going to, as much sense as it would make for the team and for Chauncey, I didn't think it was going to happen, because I didn't know if they were going to be able to move past how that did end, because it was a little messy.
After signing Saquon Barkley, can you really say that anything is impossible when it comes to signing?
Trust me, after the 2015 season where DeMarco Murray's an Eagle and Sam Bradford, nothing's impossible.
Also, I have a qualm with the national media. That's why you stick here to Locked On Eagles. Albert Breer, Mr. Know-It-All, wanted to say that, oh, the Eagles don't invest at the running back position, decided to say that DeMarco Murray was the last running back that they paid, and now Saquon is another example of that. It's two completely different GMs.
And that was
you have
Chip
no
Kelly.
basis of understanding outside of your national media realm. Come to the Locked On Podcast Network, folks. That's
what a start, man.
This is great. This is great. And
Bryce
we're not
Huff,
even at day 3.
I
we
know.
haven't officially even hit free agency
right.
yet, Lou.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Saquon Barkley, and Bryce Huff is a hell of a way to start things off. Again, the contract is 3 years, $27 million, so $9 million annually, can be upwards of $33 million, so around $11 a year. But, Gino, there would be some playtime incentives. Chauncey did miss, 14, 15 games last year, came back, had a big pick in the playoffs, played well, but he was injured, has missed 10 games in the previous 2 seasons combined, so there is some injury risk, but considering the money, I still think it's a pretty fair deal.
To have that type of energy in the building,
well worth it.
Rising tides lifts all boats. That's really what Chauncey's going to do. He's going to make those young guys feel more confident in their game by allowing them to play more free. He is going to be the queen on the chessboard, man. Like, he's just going to allow everybody else to do what they have to do.
It's a huge role in Fangio's defense. We've been saying that all offseason. And I think he's going to fill the role perfectly. And you know me, I'm a sucker for a good Eagles reunion. This one, though, makes a lot more sense than even Deshaun Jackson, Vinnie Curry. The list goes on and on. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a Philadelphia Eagle. But Howie Roseman did make some other moves that we'll get into coming up next, plus what are his next moves, as technically the league year does start tomorrow, where contracts can be officially signed. All that and more coming your way. Stick with us right here on Locked On Eagles.
This CGJ edition of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All of the conference tourneys are going on right now. They have plenty of bets over at FanDuel. So you hit on a winning $5 bets, you get $200 in bonus bets to bet on point spreads, money lines. You know we love parlays here, and you can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Thank you for FanDuel for being the official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network and LOE.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Another fun day in the books in free agency for the Eagles. They bring back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on a 3-year deal worth $27 million annually, upwards of $33 million total, so around $9 to $11 million a year on that 3-year contract. But, Gino, they did make some other moves today. They brought in Matt Hennessy, a good depth piece as a guard/center. Started over 20 games, a former third-round pick back in 2020 for, I believe, I'm drawing a blank, the Atlanta Falcons, correct?
Yes, Matt Hennessy was drafted.
Bring
by
back Matt Hennessy to the fold. Suopeta was a free agent. Same with Jack Driscoll. You needed that. Thought that made sense. They also brought in DeVante Parker on a vet minimum $1.21 million 1-year deal. Any thoughts with those two depth pieces? I thought not bad and pretty low risk moves for potentially some depth.
Well, we're not going to skip over the two biggest moves.
Well, of course, the punter and long snapper too. How can I forget?
Bringing back one of the 4 remaining Super Bowl winners in Rick Lovato, CGS alum, and Braden Mann.
Who had a great year, actually. Yeah.
And Braden Mann is a testament to all the other Locked On shows. If you want to change your punter, holding truly does not matter, because they have to punt the ball at the end of the day. So hats off to Braden Mann and Rick Lovato. It's great to have continuity there. But in terms of DeVante Parker, I'll start with him. I think what the Eagles were missing in terms of a wide receiver last year, Lou, was somebody that could fit the profile of an outside receiver. Olamide Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins, they couldn't.
They're not X receivers, no.
No, they were not the guy that could go on the outside, match up against those outside corners. Those were the guys that had to play inside. Quez had to beat you with speed. You hoped OZ beat you with this lateral quickness. Now, DeVante Parker, he's going to come in and compete for a chance to be either wide receiver number 3 but I say he's competing for the next man up on the outside role, because it's going to be AJ, it's going to be DeVante. On the inside, you'll probably see Britton Covey get first claim to that on top of whoever they add here in the mix come draft time. But they needed that true outside guy, because if one of those guys goes down, Lou, they didn't have anybody that they could throw out there.
No, just look at that Giants
even
game.
A little bit of a threat.
Yeah, for sure. And it is good that he can play on the boundary. The money is nothing. The Patriots have to still pay him almost $5 million this year. So you got him on that vet minimum contract. So yeah, it's worth a shot. If he's completely shot and he's your new Ruben Randall, you can just cut him. And yeah, I mean, that might be what it is. He's a jump ball specialist. He's not a great player, though, anymore. A former first-round pick. The last 4 years, he's been dead last every year in yards per separation, according to Warren Sharp. So that's not ideal. I don't think this is your wide receiver 3 move. I still think that's going to come through the draft, or you could still sign somebody in free agency, depending on how the market forms within the next week or two. But yeah, I mean, Gino, it's again a flyer on a guy that, like you said, you know, for that wide receiver 3 spot, you're going to want to bring in more of a shifty, fast player that can play inside, but maybe this works out where, as you mentioned, if an A.J. Brown goes down, you do have a player that can play on the outside. So a low-risk move that, you know, it has some upside for a 31-year-old that has a lot of talent.
And the one thing I will say is that if you wanted Quez Watkins to be that jump ball wide receiver, that role they were trying to kind of force him into, at least DeVante Parker can play that role. Like, he does go out there and he averages, I think, north of 15 yards.
I think he's a better player than what Julio Jones was last year. Quez Watkins. So again, is he what we were hoping for with your receiver move? No, but I don't think he's the last move they make.
And paying him the vet minimum, I forgot that you have like this offset because of New England.
New England's paying him $5 million of the 6.
Exactly.
Basically.
You can still go out there and technically pay another guy if you want to. And let's not get all bent out of shape on that guy. I think the bigger move is the Matt Hennessy move, because that's a legitimate position. That's 6th, 7th offensive lineman. And you're talking about a former 3rd-round pick, a Temple guy. He knows Philly.
Local kid.
Guard and center versatility. Quite literally could be in a competition with Cam Jurgens or Tyler Steen, and I wouldn't bat an eye. And he is a good player that is probably an upgrade over Sua Opeta, somebody who started more games. He's coming back after a season where he didn't see any action, having a injury really early on in that.
He was in line to start at right guard, if I'm not mistaken, too, before the season started.
He was going to be one of the better offensive linemen on that line. So now he comes here and he truly has that. If one of those guys goes out, one of the 3 on the inside, he is going to be the next guy to get that job. And he might end up being the Wisnowski of this group, dude. I mean, like, you talked about Steph being in that rotation with Isaac Seumalo and who was it, Chance Warmack at that time, and Wisniewski goes out there and wins you a Super Bowl. Maybe he beats out Tyler Steen for that right guard spot. I mean, who's to say he can't come in there after a year of rest and play that position well? And did we talk about the Zach Bond signing yet? Because I wanted to touch on that one as well. Yeah,
so the Eagles did sign Zach Bond last night, edge overhang linebacker player from the New Orleans Saints. Our boy Ross Jackson loves him. Actually had a lot of starts at the end of the year, had a couple sacks, tackles for loss, like a pretty solid rotational player too.
He's going to be a key special teamer, but more than anything, Lou, I think he starts to identify what Vic Fangio is going to want. In
him and Huff, you're sensing the theme of what they want on the edge.
Yes,
now. It looks very different.
More athletic, somebody who's more versatile, smaller. Yeah, they're gonna put a lot of mass on the interior. But on the outside, it's gonna be a lot of flexibility, a lot of versatility. And Zach Bond, that's what he is. He plays that jack linebacker position where he could play that strong side if you need him to defend the run. But he's gonna be a stand-up guy. He's not gonna really put his hand in the dirt. But that's the identity of what Fangio is going to try and move towards. And we had that inkling. Is this going to be an offseason, Lou, where you see some of these moves in the personnel department start to mesh up with the ideologies?
I think so. It's been moving that way the last few years, Gino. I mean,
but it's not in a way that's forced, Lou. Like, you're still getting very good players in Chauncey and Saquon.
Yeah, you didn't do the Eddie Jackson move or Deshaun Elliott. You brought in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
More. It's like you didn't go and get Austin Eckler. You're like, we're going to go get Saquon Barkley.
And that was something I was a little bit nervous about, is if they were going to take Fangio to heart, where it's like just get all his guys like Van Ginkel. You're just bringing back the entire Miami Dolphins defense. And no, that's not the case.
I'm shocked by that.
Yeah, they haven't. What's next? Daniel Jeremiah was on TV today, NFL Network, Gino, saying he thinks maybe the next move before they signed Chauncey was a trade in the secondary, specifically at cornerback. maybe that's something to keep an eye out for. You mentioned J.C. Horn about a month ago. I was talking about maybe Reek Woolen, Greg Newsome, Asante Samuel Jr. I don't think this team is done. It could be at corner. Maybe it's at linebacker too, because that's the one thing I'm a little bit nervous about right now. Patrick Queen today signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Josie Jewell
Wait, he signed today?
He
Patrick
did
Queen
sign. This time
today,
I did not get got.
boy.
I checked this time. I was nervous. I'm like, I'm not getting got 2 days in a row. Queen's off the board. Frankie Louvu signed with Washington. So those were the two top guys. Levante David's back in Tampa Bay. So linebackers are dropping like flies. Maybe Howie now shifts focus from free agency to the trade market and sees if he can get somebody for a lower price.
Did you see the tweet from, I know she's not your favorite, Josina Anderson?
I did not.
She said that it was right after they signed Howie, or right after they signed Chauncey, rather, that they were looking to acquire a linebacker one way or another. It's going
to have to be the trade market, because at this point, who are you signing? I mean, even Willie Gay Jr. signed today. They're all off
Josie
the board.
Jewell's gone. All the guys
Josie
we
Jewell.
talked about. We waste so much breath talking. Didn't we say that we were going to waste so much breath on that linebacker episode and nothing was going to come to fruition?
It might be draft or bust at this point. The Saquon move gives me a little hope that Howie is going to change his philosophy, but I don't know, man. I'm getting a little bit nervous that he's just putting all his eggs back in the Nakobe Dean basket. That's the way it's forming right now.
Yeah, Nakobe Dean probably gets Zach Cunningham back for a year and another undrafted free agent linebacker.
Why did we waste so much time? Someone in our comments, because we're doing a live show right now, said Isaiah Simmons. Maybe that's an idea. We talked about him last year. Yeah, the market doesn't look great now, though, Gino. I think trading might be an option.
I would say anything is possible. We haven't even hit the window for it to open, and Howie's already made this team better. And if that's really the last big hole that you have to identify,
they took care of safety, so I'm not going to complain, Gino. As long as they made one splash move at one of those positions, and they did it at the position, I would have rather had them go out and get a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson than a Frankie Louvu, a linebacker.
And if you're going into this draft cycle and you're worrying about potentially finding a tight end number 2 and potentially a playmaking wide receiver 3 or 4, and you don't have any clear holes, that's how you get the best draft and get the best players available and allow Howie Roseman to stay proactive. If he's reactive at linebacker, and that's the one position you have to give up to allow your team to get Saquon Barkley, Bryce Huff, and some of these moves, I'm okay with that, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little more Saquon Barkley coming up. Was it a panic signing yesterday? We had some thoughts about that on Eagles Twitter. I saw a discussion going on. I want to get my thoughts and Gino's as well coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing that we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and to make it a priority. Therapy can help you find that, what matters to you, so you can do more of it. For Gino and I, it's podcasting and talking about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back in Philadelphia. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and if it doesn't work out with that therapist, you can switch at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOn for 10% off your first month of online therapy. All right, Gino, let's talk a little bit Saquon Barkley. The national media today, big topic was the Eagles getting Saquon. Signed to a 3-year contract, over $12 million a year. Not something Howie Roseman normally does. So was it out of character? Yes. Should you normally do that at the running back position? No. We talked about that a lot yesterday. But some people are forming this move into, they're trying to combine it with the 2023 collapse, saying it was a panic move, that Howie's just trying anything to be different now and, make up for what happened last year. I don't think it was a panic signing. Again, was it something that he normally doesn't do? Absolutely. But I thought it was a very calculated move where he understood the market, the talent of the player, the team's unique position. And I don't know. Yeah, it didn't, I don't know. Did you feel desperation in that signing yesterday?
One of the very first things I learned in scouting was from Dan Hatman, former scout of the Eagles. He talked about one thing when he was in the building with Howie, was that Howie always would go towards these market inefficiencies, right, the areas where other teams aren't seen. And this was this was in 2010 when he first was getting started before he was even a GM. And you see that come to life year over year. This is what this was. This was a true market inefficiency. This is walking onto a used car lot, looking behind like the Honda Civics and the Toyotas and seeing a Ferrari and be like, what the hell is that doing on the lot? And you look inside and you're like, it has 12,000 miles on it. And it cost me what? It cost me a quarter of the actual out the door price. That's what it is. I mean, you're buying an asset that any day of the week, Christian McCaffrey, what does a Christian McCaffrey player go for if every team could bid for them on the open market and you had unlimited spending? The Christian McCaffrey amount, that's what it was. They were bidding with a rookie quarterback contract when they went out there and got Christian McCaffrey. Well, the rest of the league, they're not doing that when it comes to running back. So right now, none of those teams have that money. So now you have like a $7 million gap over his actual asset value versus what you signed him for.
Right.
You say
just because of the position.
He got paid Mooney money. He got paid Gabe Davis.
Yeah, Darnell Mooney today got he got $13+ million a year. Gabe Davis yesterday in Jacksonville got more.
And Saquon in that talent all day.
Yes, and again,
move is insane to say that.
No,
out loud.
And like if they did what Baltimore did today and signed Derrick Henry, I might actually agree that it's a panic move. I'm not somebody that's going to suddenly start paying running backs a ton of money, but again, Saquon is a unique talent. Like this is one of, I don't know, 3 or 4 players in this position. No, not even. I would say like 2 or 3 players that I would consider even giving only $12 million, which really, comparatively speaking, other positions is not that much. It's him, as you mentioned, Christian McCaffrey. If like a Bijan Robinson was on the open market, that's the kind of guy you do it for. It's a generational offensive weapon. And $12 million, like, yeah, it's a lot for a running back, but it's only 4% of their salary cap. And like you said, it's less than Darnell Mooney money. So yes, was it out of character for Howie? Sure. But being out of character is in character for Howie Roseman. And for this instance, I like that he stepped out. And, again, you can't just be different to be different. But this move, I think, was very calculated and I think does fit within the logic of what normal NFL roster construction should look like.
Let's just put it this way, folks. Let's break out a scale. On one side of the scale is 12.3 and Saquon Barkley. On the other side of the scale is 13 million and Darnell Mooney. What if Howie Roseman made that Darnell Mooney sign?
Yeah, I'd rather I love Darnell Mooney, but the Saquon move for $1.5 million less, Barkley would have a way bigger impact on your offense this year than a Darnell Mooney or a Gabe Davis.
Without a doubt. Because what are you going to do? You're going to take away throws to those two guys? No, that shouldn't. Nick Sirianni says it best. If that's in our game plan to not go through A.J. Brown, DeVante Smith, and Dallas Goedert, like we're doing something wrong. He says that all the time. And now you add somebody in a Saquon Barkley that warrants that. You're not just paying a guy to go play a role. You're paying a guy to be a playmaker, a guy you win because of. You're getting a player you win because of, Lou.
And that's rare at running backs.
$12.3 million.
Yeah, there's really only 2 or 3 running backs.
Paying 4.3 more than DeAndre Swift got in Chicago, who already has multiple good running backs.
I like that you talked about win because I was watching a lot of his 2022 highlights, Saquon Barkley today, and that Giants team won a playoff game. And they did not really have a great offensive line. You won because of your running back a lot. And that's rare in the NFL nowadays. But again, Saquon isn't just a running back. Like, I don't think people understand what his dynamic can add to this offense. You mentioned 2019 Miles Sanders yesterday. That was really the last time you saw what a true do-it-all threat in the backfield can look like. And that's not at the level.
And had this exact conversation in
and that's a rookie Miles Sanders. And you saw that at the end for a bit. But Saquon Barkley right now in his prime is on another level of that. Like, this is Shady McCoy level impact. Like, that's not just any running back. I don't think people get, like, this finally you can start mismatching a running back on a linebacker. When was the last time the Eagles could take advantage of that matchup? Or now if you say, well, we're going to put our linebacker, we'll put a safety on Saquon. All right, cool. Now Dallas Goedert has that one-on-one with a linebacker. It makes it so much more difficult when you have that do-it-all player. And Swift was okay last year, kind of a poor man's version of that, but Miles Sanders really wasn't outside of 1 year. You haven't really had that since Shady.
Saquon Barkley's been playing his whole career, getting yards after contact. Like, what's going to happen now when he plays behind a competent offensive line where he
keeps getting running backs paid, by the way. DeAndre Swift, like you said, is only making, $4 million less?
$4.3 million.
He's getting $8 million a year.
I forgot who it was on Twitter, but they said if you're a running back in a contract year, come to Philadelphia, you'll get paid. That's the way to go about it. But the thing with the contract is you're only paying him for 3 years, folks. Like let's hold our. This isn't the DeMarco Murray thing. That was bringing in a guy. I think that a DeMarco Murray signing would have been Derrick Henry, in my opinion, where it's like you're going to try and make him this 3-down back, but that's not who Derrick Henry is. Makes no sense
schematically. He's worn down. He's older, not as dynamic. And for the modern day
that would have been the DeMarco signing. This is the signing you needed to make back then in 2015. Somebody who can come in, do it all. Now you're going to have to worry about Dallas having to tackle this guy twice every season. Like that's going to help.
I just don't know how you game plan now for this offense. I mean, what are you supposed to do? And if they add a dynamic wide receiver 3, I mean, the Goddard, Barkley, Smith, Brown group of 4 with Jalen Hurts healthy and more mobile. It's just, again, only the 49ers have the personnel that can match that firepower.
We talked about this and it was just like so tongue in cheek. Like what if they make just more offensive signings and become like the Warriors? And we just kind of put it off. We're like, oh, no, we'll go back to focus on the defense. Like, oh, no, we're going to go and sign Saquon Barkley.
What if they just go at Hollywood Brown right now tomorrow?
Yeah, and it's still a good group. And, I mean, the way that the contracts are getting handed out, I don't think anybody's going to break the market. I mean, Daniel Jeremiah said at best, this wide receiver market, everybody's waiting for the draft.
Or, hold up, we just drafted Xavier Worthy in the first round. There you go. That's how you complete this giant that is the 2024 offense.
Go with that. I can't cook up nothing.
We'll get into that maybe on Mock Draft Monday next week. That's an idea. But for now, we're going to sign off. This has been the Locked On Eagles podcast. Go back and enjoy some Chauncey Gardner-Johnson 2022 highlights. He is a Philadelphia Eagle once again. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We will be back tomorrow, hopefully to recap some more moves from Howie Roseman. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off as always. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.